All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, in today's episode, we are talking about made up problems in the world of training for hiking. Now, this particular episode was inspired by an interesting quote I saw the other day online. Now, this quote was from another coach in the training for hiking space, and they were talking about a client they'd worked with who'd seen some really good results in regards to reducing pain on the trail, which is always awesome to hear because obviously so many hikers out there struggle with pain and struggle with long-term pain. So it's always great to see people seeing improvements. But when they were talking about this client, they talked about a few things in regards to their beliefs around pain prevention. And they put out a few general statements which were interesting. And one of the things they said, and this is a quote, if you struggle on the downhill with knee pain, then you need to restore your ability to jump and land. And what they said in this post, they said too many hikers out there who struggle with pain get caught up in trying to work on strength and mobility. And instead, what you need to be focusing on is your ability to jump with 2 feet in the air and land on the ground appropriately. And that was the inspiration of today's episode because it's a bit of a weird statement to make. And this is a really weird trend that is happening more and more in the training for hiking space. And you, as a listener and as someone who might be interested in these subjects, you are going to see this more and more and more over the coming months and the coming years. Because 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, when it came down to the whole training for hiking space, there weren't that many coaches out there in the world who were specifically working with hikers. There were even less who were online and actually sharing their ideas. There were a handful of people out there talking about their stuff, putting out great content, which is really cool to see. And, this is when I kind of entered the space myself. And what most people were doing at that time was they saw hikers needed help. They saw hikers had really, really low knowledge in regards to training, and most people weren't doing very good levels of training. So most of the people online were talking about basic foundational training knowledge to help the hiking community, but in a way that looked at hiking, looked at the specific demands, specific needs of hikers. And we basically talked about these foundational and fundamental training principles and applied it into the world of hiking. This in itself, back 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, this was enough to make you unique and make you different because there weren't that many people talking about hikers. Fast forward to now, 2026, these days it seems everywhere you look, there is someone talking about training for hiking, training for adventure sports, and training for outdoor athletes. And that's great to see because there's so many hikers out there, there's so many people that need help, so more and more people in the space is awesome. However, there is one, I'm going to say negative consequence of more people in the space. And that is, when it comes down to providing knowledge, providing information, helping hikers with their training, just talking about the fundamentals and foundations and basics of training, which has so much evidence to support it and so much success and so valuable for hikers, talking about that online is no longer enough for you to stand out from the crowd. It's no longer enough to differentiate you from the hundreds and thousands of other coaches and trainers out there. And because there's so many people in the hiking space, if you're just talking about the fundamentals and the basics, no matter how good they are, you're probably going to get overlooked. So, with that happening these days, what happens? What changes? How do coaches adapt? Well, typically the way people go about it is they'll change their messaging. They'll change what they talk about online. They'll change what they promote to hikers. So if someone struggles with pain while hiking, whether it's foot pain or knee pain or whatever it may be, instead of talking about the idea of focusing on building specific strength in the supporting muscles, helping improve your endurance in those muscles so they can withstand fatigue for long periods of time on the trail, instead of talking about improving mobility or paying attention to load management so you're not doing too much too soon or overloading those areas, all those fundamental basic things which have so much evidence behind them. Now, to stand out, we need to focus on jumping. We need to focus on plyometrics. We need to focus on force absorption. We need to focus on gait analysis or whatever it may be. Or if someone struggles on getting out of breath on up hills. Super common issue for a lot of hikers. Instead of the basics of focusing on building up your aerobic fitness in a smart and progressive way, instead of working on your pacing so you can actually manage how quick you go up and control yourself. Now, instead of those things, you need to be working on your carbon dioxide tolerance. You need to be working on your breath hold training. You need to be doing these other things away from the basics to improve this issue. Or if someone is really tight and restricted and struggles with mobility, instead of just doing some basic stretching and basic mobility exercises and doing that frequently and consistently, instead, that stuff doesn't work anymore. We need to be focusing on how we breathe. We need to be focusing on doing weird dances or weird movements and just getting the body flowing in these strange and different ways, or stuff like that. All of a sudden, and again, you will see this more and more and more now, everything you were doing before as a hiker isn't going to be enough to help you. And your problem will be solved by this brand new thing that I'm talking about, that no one else is talking about, that makes me different in the hiking space. I see it all the time from more and more and more coaches, so many people out there. And it's not just hikers. It happens in every different little subset or niche in the fitness world, because this is how people stand out. The typical one is the weight loss world, where every single person has a different diet they promote. And all of a sudden, what are you supposed to be doing? But as we're talking about hikers, those are the examples. Now, with that being said, when I'm talking about this, does this mean any type of new or different or out there or abstract or fancy training is bad? Not inherently, not at all. There's definitely a lot of value in different types of training. And going back to the original example, when we're talking about jumping and landing to help knee pain on descents, there is definitely value for hikers to develop that if you do it right. Because when we go down hills with a pack on our back and when maybe we're doing quite a bit of speed, there's a lot of impact going in the knees. We're absorbing a lot of force. Jumping and landing does a very similar thing. We can build up our ability to absorb force. We can build up our ability to kind of handle those stresses a little bit better. There's a lot of value in that type of thing. But when it comes down to hikers who struggle with knee pain on descents, is it necessary for 99% of people to see changes in their pain? No. Is it the missing link for 99% of hikers who do struggle with pain? No. Can you see a significant reduction and even complete disappearance of your pain with knee pain on descents without doing this? Yes. And there are dozens, personally, for me, with other things that I would look at incorporating and nailing in a hiker's program before I even worried about that type of stuff. So you see these statements online, which are really definitive, really sort of assertive, saying you are missing out if you're not doing that. You know what? It's a bit tricky. Honestly, if you are a hiker listening to this and you are interested in your training, whether it is to improve your fitness, your strength, whether it is to improve your ability on the hills or reduce aches and pains or improve yourself with pack carrying or whatever it may be, 99% of you out there, you don't need fancy training. You don't need these out there things. What you need is the basics done consistently and progressively, which sounds really, really simple in theory, but in practice, it is pretty rare to achieve. Because when we look at the basics, there's quite a bit that does go into that. Take strength, for example, and we're not going to talk about all the basics of training, but we'll use strength as an example. We often talk about building up strength and supporting muscles being incredibly beneficial for preventing aches and pains, for helping you go up and down hills more comfortably, for helping support you with a pack, and a bunch of other things. Strength, incredibly valuable. But at the basics of strength training, when we get down to it, what we want to be ensuring is we want to make sure we have a good spread of exercises, covering all the key areas in your week. So for exercises, making sure we're working the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the glutes, the calves, the core, the upper body. On top of that, ensuring we get a nice exposure to both double-legged exercises and single-legged exercises. More of the basics, we want to ensure that when we're doing our exercises, we get appropriate loading, meaning we get enough challenge to push our strength forward, but not so much challenge that we run ourselves into the ground. Another one of the basics is we want to making sure we're doing the right tempo and speed of our exercises. So we're working both our concentric and eccentric muscle development. So we're not rushing through exercises and missing out on key points, but we're going at the right speed. We want to make sure we're getting progressive overload over time because the body will adapt and get used to things relatively quickly. So if we want to nail the basics, we need to consistently, progressively overload our muscles to force them to adapt. Another of the basics, we want to get a balance between keeping an exercise the same and repeating the same exercise for a number of weeks so you can learn and master and develop it and progress it, but also get a good balance between not just doing the same thing forever and actually having a bit of variation to challenge the body in slightly different ways. And on top of all of that, those are all the basics. We want to make sure that we are consistent with this through everything life throws at you, through the busy periods, through the sick periods, through holidays, through travel, or whatever it may be, for a minimum of 8 weeks at a time. Those are the basics of strength training. That's not fancy. That's not advanced. That is the basic stuff that we want to nail if we want to get the best results. And if you can do this, and if you can tick off these boxes, you can see amazing results. You can see amazing results for your pain, amazing results for your hiking, amazing results for your performance, amazing results for your day-to-day life. But if you are missing one or more of these components, you may be doing some good stuff and it's definitely better than nothing, but you're not mastering those absolutely fundamental basics. And I think this is one of the major issues that a lot of hikers will have, because I often talk to hikers and I say, hey, you know what, strengthening, great, happy days. And they say, yeah, I've been doing this, or I've tried strength training, or I've tried these exercises, or whatever it may be. They feel like they have done this before. They feel like they've tried this and it hasn't worked. So they're looking for more advanced options. But when you dive into it and you actually ask them, hey, were you covering these areas? Or were you doing progressive overload? Or did you stick with it for a certain amount of weeks? More often than not, there's something missing. So, what's this all about today? Well, how am I going to wrap this up and tie this all together? Realistically, what I'm trying to say here, you're going to see it more and more and more over the years. Hiking training is going to get more and more out there. More and more people are going to be talking about these different and new and fancy training techniques, which you need to do if you want to see the results that you want. But I implore you, if you see that, cool, great, try that stuff out, incorporate. That's fantastic if you do. But never neglect the basics. Make sure you are nailing consistent progressive strength training. Make sure you are nailing consistent and structured cardio training, which builds up over the time and targets the appropriate energy systems for you. Make sure you're really paying attention to load management, so you are having a slow and steady increase in regards to stress through your walking, through your pack, through your hiking, and everything else over time. Make sure you're exposing the body to specific demands of hiking. If you can't get out on the trail every week, make sure you're getting some type of pack exposure, some type of elevation exposure in your actual training. Nail the basics of your training. Keep that in year round. This is the stuff that will see the majority of your results. And if you haven't been seeing the progress that you want, ask yourself honestly, do you really think you're nailing the basics? Have you been consistent? Are you confident you're ticking off the right areas? And if you're honest with yourself, you know what? Maybe there's something in there that you can change around. The basics work. The fundamentals work. That hasn't changed. All that's changed is the messaging online. So with that being said, I'm going to finish things up here. I could talk on and on and on and on about this subject. I'm going to finish things up here and wrap it up. Last thing I will sort of say on this podcast, as I always say, if you are interested in nailing the basics, if you're interested in training for your hiking and making sure you're improving your strength, your fitness, your resilience, but you're interested in getting the fundamentals right that you can apply again and again, year after year for great results and great success, I would love to chat with you. Through our online personal training, we will apply the fundamentals. We will build your strength. We will build your endurance. We will build your cardio in a way that is right for you. But on top of that, we will provide you the support, the coaching, the accountability to keep you consistent, keep you moving forward through everything that life throws at you, which is often the missing piece that a lot of people struggle with, and a bunch more on top of all of that. If you did want to find out a little bit more about what we do, you can go to summitstrength.com.au/online. On that page, there's a big video, talks a lot about our programs, and if it sounds like something you want to learn a little bit more about, there's a link on that page. You can book a free call with our team, and we can have a bit of a chat from there. So with that being said, thank you for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope it was helpful for a few people, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.